With 5 candidates ready to go, who exactly is the best fit to become the Atlanta Falcons' next GM?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of the galaxy. And today's Locked On Falcons is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. If you don't know, I'm your humble host, Aaron Freeman, aka Mr. Drew. I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 20 years over at FalcFans.com. RIP, still going strong here on Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. And on today's daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, we will be, of course, talking with our frequent guest, Jarvis Davis, Locked On analyst, Locked On Sports Atlanta. And we'll be talking all about the ongoing GM search and where our thoughts are with that. We'll talk about, the whole Kevin Stefanski's bad for the culture backlash. And we'll get all into that with, of course, Atlanta's own Jarvis Davis. And he can speak for the entire city of Atlanta later in today's episode. We'll get into the Falcons' new offensive coordinator, sort of our initial impressions of Tommy Rees. And then Jarvis and I will both be, hopefully, weather allowing it, descending on Mobile, Alabama next week for the Senior Bowl, and we'll talk about a couple of players' positions that we may have our eye on at the end of today's episode. But Jarvis, let's talk about the GM search. Falcons have selected 5 candidates so far, and have already gotten those interviews underway as we would sit here recording this on Thursday, interviewing James Lipford, the assistant GM for the Texans. But they also have bringing back Ian Cunningham, the assistant Bears GM, Josh Williams, the director of scouting and football ops for the 49ers. Both of those two guys did interview for the president of football job that went ultimately to Matt Ryan. They're also bringing in the Steelers assistant GM, Andy Weidel, Tanitra Batista's favorite candidate in this mix, and the Chiefs assistant GM, Mike Bradway. What are your thoughts on this group of individuals?
I mean, the first thing that jumps out to me is, which kind of makes this whole thing interesting, is the fact that Josh Williams and Ian Cunningham already interviewed for a director of football position when pretty much everybody and their mama knew that Matt Ryan was going to get the job. I mean, of course, they have to go through the process, and they can't just hire Matt Ryan because he's such a high-ranking position, and, the Falcons aren't in the business of, at least right now, of breaking any type of rules. So they went through that process. But when I look at Josh Williams and Ian Cunningham, being that they interviewed for that position, and it just makes me think that those are the two lead guys, because, that's one of those deals where they didn't have to get permission to interview those guys because it was a promotion. So that was very telling in my eyes. So when you have those two guys in that position, and now you bring in the other few guys, of course, assistant general managers, and then you have this high-ranking official and Matt Ryan who's conducting these interviews, you're almost at the point where you say, okay, there's a certain type of guy that you're looking for, because you're not going to get an experienced general manager. You're not going to get a guy who used to run the ship, and you can say, okay, hey, he helped get this roster to a playoffs and get these guys to the playoffs, and he drafted this guy. He responsible for drafting this guy. It's almost like you got to look at it and say, oh yeah, he was in the building when this guy was doing this, so he has to know. We went through this whole discussion on the Falcon squad. So, but I think that right now, looking at it, when you talk about fit, with who could potentially fit, I think those two names are the ones that really stand out to me, because, I like what San Francisco has done over the years. John Lynch is a former player. Those guys, essentially gravitate towards the bigs, and I like the bigs. So they need to continue to build up those bigs for me, because let me tell you, man, this offensive line, yeah, they got 5 starters, but they need to get some depth, man. They need to get some depth. I know we're going to talk about, Senior Bowl watch list later on, but that's one of my positions that I have earmarked that, hey, man, y'all need to get this right. And the wide receiver position as well. So when you look at where these guys are coming from, you can probably get at least a decent idea of how those guys are going to run a team. And I think that you talk about San Francisco, traditionally, with Kyle, ever since Kyle walked through that door, they've been pretty doggone solid from a roster building depth standpoint. And now you're looking at, what Ian Cunningham has done in Chicago, and he's had his eyes on going for the gusto and trading the number 1 overall pick and being able to get multiple picks from Carolina and drafting Caleb Williams, who looks like he's going to be a baller going forward. And then, hey, cashing out in free agency, overpaying a little bit. Drew Dahlman, they got Grady Jarrett up there. They traded for Montez Sweat. Poles he's a little aggressive. So for me, hopefully one of those guys can be the balance of the two, because, hey, you're your own man. So I think those 2 guys are the ones that I'm really focused in on, and I'm interested to see which one of those guys they ultimately go with.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. As you said, like, because none of these guys have been the guy that's been the quote unquote decider when it comes to these moves, you're just kind of looking at, okay, what buildings have they been in, and which buildings have been successful, and sort of projecting like, oh, well, they'll do that like this other guy did, right? We did a similar thing with Terry Fontenot and Mickey Loomis. Mm-hmm. And initially it felt like, because of Terry's sort of approach to the salary cap not being as aggressive of like, we're going to kick the can down the road, we were like, oh, he's very different from Mickey Loomis. But then over time with the trade ups, and then as we got further along, Terry started, borrowing the pages from Mickey Loomis about like, oh, we'll worry about the salary cap situation later, once, particularly after they had to pay Kirk. And it was like, at that point, they had to go down that road. And so, those are the influences. And you look at, the Ravens with Ozzie Newsome that both Cunningham and Weidl had. You look at the Eagles with Howie Roseman and sort of his trade frenzy that he always goes on, that Cunningham also has. Weidl and Bradway also has, and whatnot. And so you're just looking at these, these guys that come from successful organizations, and it's just kind of the idea of like, well, just do what you saw the other people that were actually making decisions do here in Atlanta. And I think for all 5 of these guys, that's what, makes them compelling. And ultimately we'll sort of see who's the guy that can kind of win over Matt Ryan and ultimately fit what Matt Ryan's vision for what this team is going to be. I think is ultimately going to be the person that gets it.
And I think we're going to find out really soon who that person is, because we know that the Falcons have had directed, interview schedules. Like I feel like these teams are so trendy, man. So I really felt like Brian, Arthur Blank, all those guys, they had a really good idea of who they wanted, which I like. I like that. But because, and you go through the process and interview other people, because you never know who might blow your socks off. But I feel like it's the same with this GM search. So I feel like the guy that they hire is probably waiting in the woods to get that phone call.
Yeah, I think similar to what we saw with the president of football was like within like 24 hours of them, maybe not even 24, it was maybe 12 hours of them completing those interviews, they named Matt Ryan the new president of football, in China and both South America. And, I think we'll see something similar here, where once they complete these interviews, which probably will be in the next couple of days, we'll probably hear that they name somebody. I would be surprised if they're doing the second round of interviews. Maybe we'll see. Again, we'll see how the Falcons play it, but I imagine they kind of, as you said, they kind of know who it is. That first interview will kind of confirm what they already want or think, and they'll proceed from there. But we'll sort of see. But you mentioned the Falcons being decisive and liking that. Well, a lot of people didn't like their decisiveness when it came to selecting Kevin Stefanski, and a lot of people have voiced their displeasure where Kevin Stefanski is a bad fit for the city of Atlanta. And as someone who is not from the city of Atlanta and is talking to somebody from the city of Atlanta, let's see if that's true. So let's break that down as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Wouldn't it be nice that doing your taxes is just as easy as it looks when Bijan Robinson gets the football? Well, with TurboTax full service, you can hand off your taxes to a local expert and not have to stress from start to finish. It's just like handing the ball off to Bijan Robinson and letting him cook. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out the forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They're going to handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms. They're going to work to get you every deduction. All you got to do is upload your documents, go about the rest of your day, and you can get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it's going to give you peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it, just like Bijan is an expert handling the football. For a limited time, get your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life by visiting turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. So before we continue today's Locked On Falcons, I want to thank each and every one of you that is an everydayer of this podcast. You are the reason why Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network in all of the galaxy. And if you want to level up your everydayness, why not join the Everydayer Club, where you can get an ad-free version of the Locked On Falcons podcast. You can get Locked On Podcast Network Discord access, where you can join me and wade into the fight to talk trash to these Saints fans. Unfortunately, Ross Jackson has far too many of his cronies in there, and I need some support, guys. So go ahead, sign up at the link in the description below at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. It's just $5 a month or $50 a year for you to get access to that Discord server, as well as other perks that you can find at the link in the description below. So Jarvis, talking about the culture, right? A very loaded word when it comes to these things. And a lot of people have voiced their displeasure with the selection of Kevin Stefanski and saying that he is anti-culture. And Jarvis, before I clear the floor and allow you to speak your piece on that and what your interpretation of all that, I will give my thoughts on it. Okay. As I said, I am not from Atlanta. I'm not from Georgia, born and raised in Virginia. I've lived most of my life in North Carolina, where I currently live. Currently have frequently visited Atlanta many times over the last 30 years, have enjoyed those visits. Basically, I love the city. As long as I'm not in my car, all my negative opinions about the city involve me being behind the wheel of a car. But, it does feel like a lot of this concept of Kevin Stefanski being a bad cultural fit. And it's been a polarizing hire to a lot of Falcon fans, I think, for a variety of reasons. But one that seems to keep coming up, and it seems to involve Shedeur Sanders. Now, I will say I don't really have much of an opinion of Shedeur Sanders. It's just like, oh, yeah, he's the son of Deion Sanders. He's a quarterback. I don't have that high opinion of him as a quarterback prospect. I told somebody the other day that I kind of thought his ceiling in the NFL is kind of a Jameis Winston. He's kind of a less talented, physically gifted Jameis Winston type of quarterback, which is a perfectly solid NFL career, but probably not a guy that's, going to be winning, multiple Super Bowls or anything like that. That's just kind of my opinion, but we'll see. That opinion can obviously evolve over time as we watch and see him grow in the NFL. But Shedeur, the easiest way I can explain it, and maybe this is a loaded term, but he kind of has a cult following, is the best way I can describe it, amongst a lot of people. And it leads to, I think, a severely negative opinion of Kevin Stefanski amongst that cult following. And like I was saying this when the Falcons hired Shedeur Sanders, hired Kevin Stefanski. Ooh, they're in a frenzy right now. But and there's a world, Jarvis, as a tangent where Shedeur might be playing for the Atlanta Falcons at some point in the next 5 years, but we'll cross that bridge if and when we get to it. But like I basically said that when you hear someone criticizing Kevin Stefanski, your immediate follow-up question kind of has to be is like, what are your thoughts on Shedeur Sanders? Because it does feel like a lot of the people that have been the most vocal critics of Kevin Stefanski essentially believe that Shedeur Sanders is, the next superstar in the league. And the fact that he didn't necessarily deliver on that promise, it was not because, he may be lacking as a prospect or a player. It's because Kevin Stefanski and the Browns and the NFL and all the stuff are out to get him in all these various things. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. But Jarvis, when you hear all this cultural backlash as someone who is, much more plugged in to the Atlanta culture, having lived most, if not all of your life in and around the city, what are your thoughts when you've heard all of these things? And, if you agree or disagree with me, that's more than fine.
I think that this whole Kevin Stefanski is a bad fit for the culture conversations are stupid.
Okay.
They are utterly dumb. And I feel like if I have the conversation, I'm going to become dumber. I know that might scare a lot of people because some people probably think I'm dumb anyway, which is cool. I get that. Totally understand. Right. But overall, man, I think we need to get back to ball. Let's talk ball. If you don't like Kevin Stefanski because he's had one of the worst offenses in the past 2 years in the NFL, cool. Let's talk about that, bro. But for you to sit up here and say that he was holding Shedeur down, you know what I'm saying? He was the man and all that stuff, man. I don't buy that because at the end of the day, the man got fired. He got fired. So you think if he would have gave Shedeur preferential treatment, that he would have won a lot more games and he would still have his job in Cleveland? Nope, that wouldn't happen. And don't get me wrong, I feel like Shedeur can be a solid quarterback in the NFL. Now, solid quarterback can be backup too. And solid quarterback can be starter. That's possible. You don't have to be the face of the franchise or bust. It doesn't work like that in my book. I know a lot of other people do who talk about the game. They can kind of operate in that world, but I don't. But so for me, when you talk about culture and being bad for the culture, you know how it'd be good for the culture? Win some damn games. If you win some football games, you mean to tell me you're not going to come? But yeah, man, I just think it's dumb overall. And then the argument that, he treated Shedeur wrong and Dion played here, so Dion don't want to talk to Arthur Blank anymore, and they shouldn't hire him because of that. No, man. No, that's a dumb argument. If you're going to talk to me about why Kevin Stefanski shouldn't be the head coach of this team, let's talk ball. It's simple. You can look at his coaching record, lose a record. Yep, that's true. He has the answer to that. What went wrong in Cleveland, sir? What makes you think you're qualified for this position? So, all of those things need to be talked about before we start talking about he's not good for the culture, because then we have the last regime. Wasn't that good for the culture? Because we can't define what the culture is. It's a term that people throw around. It can mean something for me, and it can mean something totally different for you. And you who watching and listen to this podcast. So if you can't clearly define something, let's move away from it when we're trying to figure out whether or not somebody's good enough to be the head coach of your team that you're a fan of.
I think that's a fair way of putting it, Jarvis. I agree with you. I think there are valid reasons to question the Falcons' hiring of Kevin Stefanski that
1,000%.
have nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders or whatever other issues people have that are, legit, as you say, on-field ball questions. And so those are things that are going to be unpacked. Like, so I'm not one of these people that is like, oh, you need to support this hire for reasons. Look, you feel however you want to feel about Kevin Stefanski. I frankly, I don't. Yeah, I know my audience understands this. I don't care what other people think about that. I have my opinion. You are welcome to having your opinion. I will listen to you voice your opinion, but it ain't changing my opinion. I'll tell you that much. So, we'll see what's what. Any sort of follow-up thoughts, Jarvis, before we move on and talk, about Tommy Rees and
I don't want to talk about Shedeur anymore.
Okay. I'm just saying we might be 3 years away from talking about Shedeur. That's all I'm saying. When he's a free agent, if the Falcons have figured out the quarterback situation,
be fired in 3 years.
I don't know, Jarvis. I don't know. I'm just saying if the Falcons haven't figured out their quarterback situation between now and 2028 or whenever Shedeur is a free agent, I think we're going to be talking about Shedeur. I don't know. We'll see. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say.
Shoot, they might be calling you right now to come interview for a head coaching spot because nobody wants the job.
That's what I've heard.
These folks out here taking OC gigs, bro, instead of head coaching jobs.
Yes, I'm good on Cleveland. I'm good on Cleveland. But another person that I'm sure is probably happy that he's no longer in Cleveland is Tommy Rees, named the new Falcons offensive coordinator. Another sort of polarizing maybe candidate. So we'll unpack that as well as talk about the Senior Bowl and all the prospects that will be far less polarizing come draft time, because you're going to have Jarvis Davis on here talking about, hey, draft this guy and you'll prosper. And we'll get into all of that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Now, we know there's nothing like being at the game, whether it's the crowd noise, the injury, or cheering alongside your fellow fans. Being in the stadium just hits different. But the frustrating part can be getting in the stadium when it comes to getting tickets, because you got to worry about waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change at the checkout. That's why the Gametime app is giving the advantage back to you, the fans, and taking the guesswork out of getting tickets to your favorite events. What you see is what you get with Gametime. The price you see is the price you pay. You don't have to worry about hidden fees at checkout, and you can preview your seat before you buy, right? So there are no surprises when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime by downloading Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and get back to being there live. And FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users are going to get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like the most. All you got to do is open the profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. And the boosts are going to lean into your game day instincts. Whatever you're feeling, momentum, coaching, players, quarterbacks, whatever it is, the boosts are going to give you more juice to the bets that you already like, instead of forcing you to bet on something that you don't like. So make your picks, then apply your profit boosts and go after even bigger payouts. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons here with Jarvis Davis, Locked On Sports Atlanta. Let's talk about Tommy Rees. He's the hire for the Falcons at offensive coordinator. I don't really have a strong Tommy Rees opinion. As I said on the Falcons squad, every fan base hates their offensive coordinator. And so when you hear people criticizing an offensive coordinator, like you see it with Zach Robinson and going to the Tampa Bay, and everybody's like, oh, Tampa Bay is going to be terrible now that Zach Robinson's there. Like, he'll be fine. And so,
just 85% of the time.
We'll probably on this podcast, we'll probably do a deeper dive on Tommy Rees later this offseason as we do more research and talked to various Locked On folks that cover the teams that he called plays for. But at this point in time, we have like 9 games of Tommy Rees calling plays in the NFL. He inherited the worst offense in the league, from Kevin Stefanski when he took over play calling midway through last year. And it continued to be the worst offense in the league. So it didn't really change all that much. And from the people that I have talked to that have actually sat down and watched that Browns offense from last year, they basically say the play calling wasn't that different from one guy to the next. So
that's not good.
Yeah. So Jarvis, when you hear that Tommy Rees is the Falcons new offensive coordinator, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel that it's hard for me to be positive about it, but I can't be super negative about it because Kevin Stefanski gonna call the plays, right? And then here's another question that needs to be answered. Why did you stop calling plays 2 years in a row?
That's a good question, Jarvis.
What? Like, aren't you the expert? Aren't you supposed to show how it's done? Or they were just coming up with these amazing game plans, and you just like, oh man, you know what, man? I'm gonna give you a shot.
What
was it?
I'm thinking he's just looking at the record and he's like, look, man, I don't care anymore. You try. I did my best. I tried my best.
It was so bad in Cleveland that that's probably maybe partially true. It's like, I'm tired. That man said, I'm tired, boss. He said, hey, man, here go the play sheet, bro. Yeah, that's a great game plan. Yep. He like, coach, you didn't even look at it. Yeah, man, I trust you, dog. Go ahead, do your thing. And, man, it just a lot of screens. They have no running game. Offensive line wasn't all that great. And normally Cleveland keeps a pretty good offensive line. Like, traditionally, they kept good offensive linemen throughout the years. See Alex Mack. So, but yeah, man, it's just weird. It's hard. It's weird because I know you have to have someone in that spot, even if he's going to call plays. I get that. But where are the results? Like, this is a results-based business. Why are you bringing him along with you? Bill Callahan, but you don't have to explain nothing to me, Jack. I understand. Totally understand. That man is coached at least 8 or 9 all-pro guys, that he's coached. So I'm not gonna question that. As much as I love me some Dwayne Leffert, that man is a hell of a coach. And I'm sure that he's probably getting the job as we doggone recording this podcast. But I have to question it. I have to question the hire. Okay, when did you call plays? Oh, last year. How'd you do? Ooh. I mean, what's he gonna say?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know people want to give it a chance and it's gonna work out and all this, and optimistic folks. I get that. Looking at the hire, I have questions. I had questions about Kevin Stefanski. I'm not all the way on board with it, but it is what it is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I had questions there too. So, and they're positive and negative. I ain't got nothing but negative with Tommy Rees. What has he done? What have you done, sir? Like, why are you here? You know what I'm saying? Those are the questions you have to ask when people take these jobs. When he decided to retain Jeff Ulbrich, totally understand, coach. Yep. And hopefully the news of Nate Ollie being retained, we'll hear that news and be like, yeah, man, break a sack record? What, 1997? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, almost 30 years ago? Yeah, man. Yeah, come on. We're going to keep you around. So that's the type of stuff when it comes to filling out staffs and, when you're trying to figure out whether or not you feel good about it, not so great, it's awful. I'm not sitting up here saying it's an awful hire, but I can't find anything positive to say about Tommy Rees in the NFL.
Yeah, I think it's fair. We have questions. Questions. So we'll see. A lot of people say he's an up and comer, but
we go with that stuff.
Sean
McVay messed it up for everybody.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I've heard about so many up and comers over the years, and sometimes they deliver, and sometimes they don't. And so, like, it's like you
Remember
hear
Ken
it,
Dorsey? Remember that
yeah,
up and
yeah.
comer? Where
He
he at?
he was in Cleveland. He had a cup of coffee in Cleveland.
Yeah, he was there in 24 when Stefanski gave up play calling duties to him.
Mm-hmm.
I see a trend here. What is going on? What's going on?
Hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of that soon. Obviously, Stefanski will be speaking to the media for the first time on Tuesday, so we'll get some insight into that. But on Tuesday, Jarvis and I will be at Senior Bowl practice. Hopefully, again, weather permitting, because
Yes.
apparently the storm of the century is coming, and is about the South don't do well with ice and snow, so all hell's about to break loose all across the southern part of the United States. So hopefully it'll be okay. But we'll be down there. Jarvis, I know you're going to be disappointed when I tell you this, but I don't know if I'll be watching the trenches this year.
I know. When we were having a conversation about what we were going to talk about, and you was like, okay, who are you going to be in your watch list? I was like, I don't know if I need to look at the edge guys. Now, there's some edge guys that
they're coming. The best edge group that they've had in a while, too. That's what's crazy.
Mr. Dorr, Ruben Bain, if those guys participate, from what I hear, they are. Man, sign me up for those one-on-ones. Y'all know where I'll be sitting. Y'all go over there with them little dudes and do the one-on-ones over there and throw the ball around on air. I'm cool with that. Man, I'm over here. I'll be right here, and I have my phone out because I need to see this. But, yeah, man, and then once I figured that out, I was like, oh. After that, I was like, wide receiver? Colin Lacey, the wide receiver out of Louisville. He piqued my interest. Louis Bond, wide receiver out of Boston College. He absolutely torched Georgia Tech. So, yeah, anybody who kind of, tears up folks that I pay close attention to, yeah, I got my eye on those guys. So, yeah. Wide receiver, man, gotta have it. I don't know. You can't go into the season again. And then you can even take a look at a guy. He's older, but he's productive. Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. Why not?
Well, that national championship game.
Come on. Like somebody you can count on consistently. He's going to catch the rock. All you got to do is put it in the area. Yeah, kind of missed that this year. Darnell Mooney.
Jarvis, you had something you thought you need a drink of water?
My bad. I said that out loud. My bad.
Yeah, man, it's funny because it's like this is probably the deepest group of edges that they've had. If again, as you said, if all these guys actually work out, because we've seen it before where this like top 15 pick is like, I'm going to the Senior Bowl, and then we were looking at the weigh-ins and like, wait, did such and such weigh in? It's like, nah, he pulled out.
Got on up out of there.
His agent was like, nah, you ain't going to see him. you don't need to go there. You'll be all right. So if we get some of these guys working out, it's going to be like, man, this is I'll be watching the wide receivers and corners because I think that's the two biggest positions that the Falcons have to address.
Yeah.
You can tell a lot from the one-on-ones. This is the first year. This is my fourth year going down to Mobile for the Senior Bowl. And this is my first year not watching the trenches. And I'm there's going to be part of me that's going to be like, what's going on in that half of the field?
I'll tell you about it. You know what I'm saying? I'll go over there first, and then I'm going to come back.
Jarvis, what did Ruben Bain? Was David Bailey out there? TJ Parker, was he killing it? So there's going to be part of me that there's going to be a hole in my heart.
Big boy D tackle. You know what I'm saying? Maybe potentially. Maybe. Yeah.
So we'll have it all covered, guys, next week here on Locked On Falcons. Next episode of Locked On Falcons should be available for you guys tomorrow, which will be an in-depth breakdown of Michael Penix. Didn't quite do that when we did the positional review for the quarterback, and give you my thoughts on the things that Penix needs to work on, the things that Penix got better at, and what does that mean potentially for this new regime under Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees. And so that will be in store for you on the next episode of Locked On Falcons. And then after that, we will be doing all Senior Bowl stuff, wall-to-wall coverage for the next week. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check us out on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out Locked On NFL to get the scoop on this weekend's conference championship battles. We're going to find out who's going to the Super Bowl, right? So get the scoop on that on Locked On NFL. And of course, check out the Everydayer Club at the link in the description below, lockedonfalcons.supercast.com, $5 a month or $50 a year to get that ad-free version of the podcast, Discord access, as well as merch store link. All that's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And oh, yeah, Joe Douglas is also a GM candidate.